Hi everyone, Tim Ash from TTS Real Estate. Welcome to the TTS Weekly Recap. This is a short video where I cover the top questions asked of me from a real estate point of view. And this week we are covering the exciting topic of, drum roll, gas and electrical safety checks. I understand, riveting stuff. However, I do think that you will get a lot out of this video as it is a topic that really does affect you as an owner of a investment property. So the questions that we're going to cover off today are: what do you need to do? Who can provide the gas and electrical safety check certificates? How often does it need to be done? So essentially, any new lease that was entered into after March of 2021 must have their gas and electrical safety checks done every 2 years and the smoke alarm checks done once a year. The other change of the legislation is both you and I are equally liable to ensure that your property complies. So essentially, should a tenant fall ill or get hurt due to these checks not being done where they should have been done, you could be fined what's known as penalty units, or there could be a much severe punishment, if that makes sense. So a penalty unit is roughly $184.92. The fines range from 60 penalty units all the way up to 300 penalty units. So there's no I in team, and we really do work together. And our agency, we make it imperative and we put it as top priority to ensure that your property does comply with the minimum standards and has had their gas and electrical safety checks done. Essentially, where you don't need to do it is if you have a brand new property. This wasn't always the case. When they first brought this legislation out, they said even brand new properties had to have them, so properties that have just been built and never been lived in. However, there was quite a bit of pushback and they've now changed that. However, after 2 years on that brand new property, you need to get the gas electric safety checks done, and after 1 year, you will need to get the smoke alarm serviced as well. So let's jump straight into the gas checks. So essentially, the gas checks covers gas appliances as you would assume, such as heaters, stoves, hot water, anything that is serviced by gas. And this was to put a stop to the carbon monoxide poisoning. So you may remember some of those unfortunate cases that happened quite a few years back where people lost their lives. This legislation was essentially brought in to prevent that from happening any further. The other item worthy of note is that you can't just use any plumber to get these checks done. It needs to be a licensed gas fitter. And essentially, only gas fitters who are currently registered or licensed in a specialised Type A appliance servicing are able to carry out this work. That's a very important item to remember, because when this legislation first came through, a lot of other trades that weren't licensed, didn't have that Type A license, were conducting these checks. And what you have to do is, once the checks have been conducted and the property is deemed compliant, you then have to lodge that with the VBA. So a lot of these plumbers that didn't have that Type A license, they couldn't actually lodge paperwork, which meant that the property was still non-compliant. So there was quite a few owners that were a bit frustrated, obviously having to pay twice in order to get these checks done. Obviously, our clients weren't subject to any of that. And essentially, as I said, I covered that off. The reason is, as I mentioned, is they have to provide an official record of the check, which includes a compliance certificate, a copy of the gas servicing work submitted to the VBA and given to the rental provider and us as an agency under the Gas Safety Installation Regulations 2018. Also, as part of the new legislation, the tenant has the right to request these documents to confirm that the works have been done. So they can state any reason as to why they would like these documents, and us as your agents, we have to provide them. There is a long list of technical items that the gas safety checks do cover off and do check. I'm not going to cover that off in the video, but you can jump onto Consumer Affairs if you want a bit more detail on that. And that pretty much summarises the gas checks. So jumping straight into the electrical checks, they have to be done once every 2 years by a registered electrical contractor, in other words, a licensed electrician. All the checks the electrician covers off are electrical installations and fittings of the premises, from downlights, switchboards, checking the wiring, ovens, range hoods, hot water services, etc. They can also do smoke alarms, which have to be done annually, and essentially any other electrical fixture as part of the property will be checked with these electrical checks. And essentially the record keeping is somewhat similar, although it doesn't need to be lodged with the VBA, but essentially the electrician that does the check, we need to keep on file their full name, business details, including license and registration number of the electrician or registered electrical contractor who did the checks, the date of the safety check, the results of the check, including any repairs that were required and actions to be addressed by the repair, and confirmation that all installations and fittings have been checked and found to be safe. So that sort of covers off your gas and electrical safety check component. The only other component to that is obviously the smoke alarms. The smoke alarms are a lot less technical, but essentially as part of the new legislation, you as the rental provider and us as the agent, we must make sure that they are correctly installed and in working order, are tested according to the manufacturer's instructions at least once every 12 months, have their batteries replaced as required, and this was the big change, repaired or replaced as an urgent repair. So prior to the change in the legislation, what used to constitute an urgent repair was a burst hot water service, a serious gas leak, a dangerous electrical fault, or anything that could cause harm to the tenant. Now what's been thrown in there is smoke alarm. So if the smoke alarm isn't working properly, it is now deemed as an urgent repair. Also, as part of the new legislation, it has stated that us as the agents, we must provide the instruction forms for each smoke alarm in every single property. So as you can appreciate, 18 months on, the work that's been done on this, we basically, because we both have equal liability and accountability, we would have looked after your best interests anyway, but we are taking especially good care to ensure that the paperwork is up to scratch, that the property complies, and properties that do come back with quotes, the way we tackle this is we use one-stop shop services. So we know exactly if there are further works to be done in order to ensure your property complies with the gas and electrical safety checks. We can clearly articulate that to you rather than, having a trade here and a trade there and getting separate quotes. We're able to sort of get photos, get proper quotes, and identify what needs to be done. Also, the other advantage of having your property compliant is should you need to make any insurance claims, if your property isn't compliant, it may actually affect the claim that you do make. And that pretty much sums it up. So 18 months on, we are finding that we're pretty much caught up and most of our portfolio is compliant. If you do have any questions around your property, please feel free to reach out. And I really hope you've enjoyed this episode and that you've gotten quite a bit out of it. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you next week. Thank you, guys.